James Harker stood in the doorway of his apartment, staring at the two small figures who had just materialized in his living room. His hand instinctively moved toward the plasma pistol he no longer carried. Old habits from 15 years in the Terran Defense Corps died hard. Children, if they could be called that, looked almost human. Almost. Their skin held a faint luminescence, like moonlight trapped beneath porcelain. Their eyes were too large, too knowing, shifting between violet and silver. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old, twins by the look of them. A boy and a girl holding hands. "Daddy," they said in perfect unison, their voices carrying harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. James's blood ran cold. "I'm not your father. You need to leave now." The little girl stepped forward, tilting her head in a gesture so achingly familiar that James's chest tightened. It was exactly how Aliana used to look at him when she was puzzling something out. "You are James Harker," the boy said, his voice losing its eerie synchronization with his sister's. "Husband of Aliana Harker, deceased 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days ago." The apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. James hadn't spoken his wife's name aloud in months. "How do you know that name?" The girl reached into a satchel that James hadn't noticed before and pulled out a Data Crystal Terran military issue. Old model, the kind Aliana had used during her service as a xenobiologist. "She gave us this," the girl said softly. "She said to find you if anything happened to her." James took the crystal with shaking hands. He hadn't seen one of these in years. Moving to his cluttered desk, he swept aside whiskey bottles and meal packets, finding his old reader buried under 3 years of deliberate forgetting. The crystal slotted in with a click that echoed through his memory. Aliana's face bloomed into existence above the reader, and James forgot how to breathe. "James," the recording began, and even though he knew it was just photons and programming, his heart lurched. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry." He sank into his chair, unable to look away from her face, those warm brown eyes, that slight smile she always wore when she was about to explain something that would change his understanding of the universe. 2 years ago, MY research team made first contact with the Lumen. "They're a dying species, James. Their sun is collapsing, and they don't have the technology to evacuate their world in time. But they have something we don't, the ability to encode consciousness, memory, and genetic information into living vessels." James's eyes snapped to the twins, who watched him with unsettling patience. "The Luminari asked for volunteers," Aliana's recording continued. "Humans willing to carry their children not in the traditional sense, but as genetic partners. They needed human DNA to give their offspring the adaptability to survive on other worlds. The human genome is remarkably flexible, James. It's one of the things that makes us special in the galaxy." She paused, and James saw the guilt in her recorded eyes. "I volunteered. I know I should have told you, but you'd already lost so much in the war. I couldn't ask you to lose more. The process was supposed to be safe. The Luminari would contribute their consciousness and psionic abilities. I would contribute human resilience and adaptability. The children would be born after I returned home." James's hands clenched on the armrests, but there were complications. The merger was more complete than expected. When the twins were born, they carried not just my DNA, but my memories, my personality, pieces of who I am. "They're not just Luminari, James. They're not just human. They single quotes read ... both their hours." The recording flickered. "I didn't survive the birth. My body couldn't handle the process. But these children did. Kale and Lyra, our children. James, I know it's not what we planned. I know it's not the family we dreamed of, but they need you. They're human enough to be targeted by those who fear the Luminari, and Luminari enough to be rejected by those who hate aliens. They need a father who understands both worlds." Aliana leaned closer to the camera, and James could see the tears in her eyes. "I know I'm asking the impossible, but you're the strongest man I've ever known, James Harker. You taught me that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our ships, it's our ability to choose family, to protect those who need protecting, regardless of where they come from. Please, choose them." The recording ended. James sat in silence for a long moment, then looked at the twins. Really looked at them. Kale had Aliana's stubborn chin. Lyra had her curious eyes. But they both had something else, something that sparked in their gaze when they looked at him. "Hope, you have her memories?" James asked quietly. "Some," Lyra said. "Not all. We remember feelings mostly. Safety, love, your voice, reading stories before sleep, the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of your laugh. We remember you, Daddy," Kale added. And this time the word didn't sound like an accusation or a demand. It sounded like a plea. James thought about the last 3 years. The empty apartment, the bottles, the slow erosion of purpose. He thought about the soldiers he'd commanded, the impossible situations he'd faced, the axiom that had kept him alive through the Proxima campaign. Humans don't abandon their own, but who were their own? The question had seemed simple once. Now, looking at these children, alien, human, and something entirely new, the answer felt both more complicated and more obvious than ever. Aliana would have called this the next step in human evolution, he said finally, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Humanity not as a species, but as an idea that spreads. He stood, walked to the twins, and knelt to their eye level. I'm not ready to be a father, he said honestly. I'm probably going to mess this up. But your mother, both mothers, I guess they chose me for a reason. He extended his hands, and after a moment's hesitation, the twins took them. Their skin was warm, their grips surprisingly strong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to figure this out together. No lies, no running. Whatever comes next, we face it as a family, Deal, Daddy, they said together, and this time, James didn't flinch at the word. As he pulled them into an awkward, unpracticed hug, he felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose. The galaxy might fear what these children represented, the blurring of lines, the mixing of species, the unknown future they embodied. But James Harker was human, and humans had never been good at accepting limitations. They'd reached for the stars, crossed the impossible distances, and now apparently they'd redefined family itself. It was the most human thing he could think of.